Order today and get 0% interest for up to 48 months at Pella Windows and Doors of Wisconsin.
Certain restrictions apply at 6/30/2024.
Marquette Hall of Famer Tony Smith here. You're listening to the home of Marquette basketball. 94.5 ESPN is WKTI and WKTI HD Milwaukee.
A locally owned Good Karma brand station. It's time for the best 60 minutes of your life. This is the Homer Hour, broadcasting live from the Gruber Law Office's One Call That's All studio at the Avenue in downtown Milwaukee. Here's Emmy Award winner Homer.
Yes, someone has objected to that intro and says, so we say now the best 60 minutes of your day. I only mentioned because I know Jay Bilas would say something if I did. You say what, Homer? All right, Jay Bilas of ESPN. If you don't know who he is, you're listening to the wrong station. And I want to let everybody know this one is going to be put up on Wisconsin On Demand because I want to know what's going on in college sports, and that means I go to my expert, Jay Bilas. Good evening, Jay.
Homer, how you doing?
I'm living the dream. How about you?
I'm doing all right. I'm not sure this is going to be the best 60 minutes of my day, but I'm hopeful.
All right. Well, it's going to be for people listening. The last time we talked about college sports, I said they can't keep paying these coaches. There's not enough money. And your line was, Homer, they got tons of money. Now we moved on. We haven't talked since then. And this is basically information to help all those people out there who have no idea what's really going on. What would you tell them first?
Well, about the current system,
yes,
or kind of what's
sports.
going on
I'm
right now?
a fan of a school. What the hell's going on? They need money. Is it going to be football only? Everybody has 1,000 questions. I'll get to those. But what would you say that the average fan of a Division I school should feel about his sports teams in the future right now?
Well, they're going to feel the same way. I mean, what I would ask is, how did you feel when your team started, when your school started paying your coaches millions of dollars to coach, or when you started selling your media rights along with other NCAA institutions and the schools in your conference for literally billions of dollars? If that didn't affect your love of the game and how much you support your school, I don't see why athletes being compensated to the level that your school chooses should bother you. To me, it's pretty simple. If these athletes are old enough to sell for billions of dollars, they're old enough to compete in the marketplace with everyone else for their fair market value. I just don't think this is a controversial thing, but I do understand that what we're seeing now and then what we're going to see in the next probably 3 years is going to be an adjustment for some people. They've had it a certain way for a long time, but the way it was illegal. It violated federal antitrust law, and the NCAA is finding that out in some of these lawsuits, especially the House case and the cases tied to it, where they're trying to settle the case now, and they're going to pay $2.8 billion in damages, basically for back wages, to the players that were in that class action lawsuit, and they're also agreeing, if the court approves the settlement, to paying up to 22% of future revenues to athletes over the next 10 years. So we're going to see athletes compensated to a higher level than they have been, and reasonable minds can differ, but I think that's perfectly appropriate. And it's not a mandate now. So it doesn't mean that Marquette or the University of Wisconsin, they don't have to pay anything if they want. They can have volunteer coaches. Everything can be free if they want and play. They don't even have to give scholarships. But now they can. The NCAA is agreeing through the settlement, if it gets approved by the court, that you're going to be allowed to be players can be directly compensated by their schools, which in over 100 plus years of the NCAA, that's never been allowed.
Talking with Jay Bilas. Why did this never happen in the past? People have said to me, the NCAA should have done something against this, and my answer is no, they knew this was going to happen. They just were trying to sell the bluff as long as they could until they lost, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think that's pretty accurate. There was some hubris there that the NCAA just thought they were right. They were always going to have the support of the courts and the legislatures, but it just kind of strains the mind that you could have a multi-billion-dollar entertainment industry run off college campuses and be as big as the NBA or the NFL as far as revenues are concerned. And nobody's ever going to point it out, and the players were never going to ask for compensation. It strains the mind. And look, this was avoidable, and it could have been handled in a more orderly fashion, but the NCAA wanted to fight in court over it. And they had some protections for a while. There was a case, what a lot of people don't recognize or understand. When I was in college in the mid-1980s, that's when things really changed. There was a lawsuit where the schools sued, the actual members, the member schools sued the NCAA under an antitrust theory, the same theory that the players are suing under now. And back then, there was a gentleman named Walter Byers who was the executive director. They didn't call him president back then, but he was the executive director of the NCAA, and he ruled kind of with an iron fist. And he used to determine out of the NCAA office in Kansas City how often schools could be on television. And it was his and the NCAA's, infinite wisdom that if you oversaturated the television market, people would stop going to games. They would just watch them at home. And that would really hurt ticket revenue, which was the biggest revenue source up to that point. Nobody really contemplated how big television was going to be and media rights were going to be. So the NCAA lost that lawsuit. It was called the Board of Regents case. And once that case was lost by the NCAA, and in some ways it was a win, I'll get to that, but then conferences and schools could go out and sell their media rights. And for a few years, they couldn't figure it out. They weren't sure, do we bundle them together? Do we do it by conference? Do we do it individually? They didn't make a whole lot of money at first, but they figured it out in a couple 3 years, and then the money started exploding, and that's when coaches started making more money. I think I'm right in this, that Coach K, when I played for him, probably made less than $100,000 a year. His last years at Duke, he was making in the $10 to $12 million a year range. And even more than that when you factor in some of his off-court compensation. But there was some language in that case that gave the NCAA some protection, and so they won a lot of court cases over the years. But they lost all of it in a recent case called Alston. The Alston case was about academic benefits, and they went up to the Supreme Court. The NCAA lost 9-0. And they lost some of the protections they had from that Board of Regents case back in the 1980s. So they understand that going forward, they're not going to win any more of these antitrust cases, and that's why they're trying to settle this current one at a $2.8 billion price tag and concessions going forward to paying athletes. And we'll see if it gets approved. But what that means to me is we'll see what happens. But once this thing's approved in another year, you're going to see schools allowed to pay the players directly, and it'll be normal business. So instead of signing them to a letter of intent, they'll likely just offer the player a contract, and the contract can be whatever the school and the player agreed to. Like if I'm approaching you, if I'm Marquette, the head coach at Marquette, if I'm Shaka Smart, I come to Homer True and I say, hey, Homer, we think you're going to be really good here. We'll give you a 2-year contract at $250,000 a year, a scholarship, your housing, stuff like that. But there's going to be a $250,000 a year buyout in there. So if you decide to leave, if you decide to go pro, if you decide to transfer, you're going to owe us $250,000 for every year remaining on the contract. And if you get arrested, we get to terminate. If you don't go to class, if you don't attend 95% of your classes, we get to terminate. Stuff like that. You can put whatever in it you want. And you can also buy up the media rights of a player. Just like, Shaka Smart can't go out and do whatever commercial he wants. Marquette University signs him to an employment contract, and he agrees that he's whatever endorsement deals he does, he has to wear Jordan brand. Like he can't just go out and do a deal to wear Puma. He's got to wear the Jordan brand stuff. But if he gets an offer to do a commercial, he has to run it by Marquette, and they have to okay it. It's really pretty orderly, and it'll be really orderly with players as soon as the settlement gets figured out, and the schools can just do normal business. They do it all the time. I don't know how many employees Marquette has, but I can tell you this: where I went to school, Duke University has 30,000 employees. They don't stay up at night saying, what do we pay everybody? I mean, do we pay the president of the university more than we pay the head of the landscape department? Like, what do we do? They don't do that. They know what everybody's worth, and they know what the market is.
Talking with Jay Bilas. I want to get to the future, the 22%, but $2.8 billion. How do they come with that? It's back wages to former players? Are you going to get anything? Is Tony Smith going to get anything? How did they determine this passed? Because they've basically said, now you can get it, right? But why not go back to 1970? What's the...
They can't. There's a number, there's a limit to it.
Oh, okay.
I don't know exactly how far it goes back, but you have to be a member of the class, and they do that in a class action thing. So it's a number of years, but I don't know exactly what that is.
Nobody really cares that much anyway. They're going to agree to it, or they've come close to agreeing to it?
No, they've agreed to it.
Oh,
they've agreed to 2 point. They've agreed. So the parties, the plaintiffs, the players, and then their counsel have agreed to accept $2.8 billion in damages. And they've agreed to a future sort of revenue share, if you will, of a cap of 22%.
22% of what? 22% of what? The sport
of all the broadcast revenues
for that support, or for the school?
For the entire enterprise. So I don't know whether it goes to, well, it'd be by school, but I don't know whether it goes to ticket revenues and how many T-shirts
will golfers or will track people get access to that? My assumption was all the money's going to go to the sports that generate income, but am I wrong?
It could be. It depends on what the school wants to do. Every school can do whatever they want to do. Just like, okay. I don't know any school where the golf coach makes as much as the football coach. They don't. The world doesn't work that way, and it's not going to work that way with athletes. The best athletes will make more money, and the more visible athletes will make more money. Just like if we wanted everything to be fair, every basketball player at Marquette would play the same amount of minutes and start the same amount of games and go to the same amount of press conferences. They don't do it that way because it's not Halloween where if you dress up, everybody gets a piece of candy. It doesn't work that way. So it's not that big of a deal. And if Marquette or Wisconsin decides, hey, look, at our place, we're going to pay everybody the same. So if we give you a uniform, everybody's going to make the same amount of money. And then see how it works out for them in the marketplace. Because whoever's recruiting against Marquette, Purdue's going to say, nope, Zach Edey's getting more than the last guy on the bench. And money is going to be a factor for everybody, just like it is with us. Like, I don't think I'm talking out of school, but if ESPN decided they're going to pay everybody the same, I think a lot of us would be out of there.
Well, but I would fear for, and I'm not defending them, but I would fear for smaller sports because if it's 22%, I want to give the money to the people that are generating the money for us. I like swimming, but
it's not like swimmers are treated the same as football players now anyway.
Correct,
Their facilities aren't as good and all that. I mean, this is America, and it's a meritocracy. Schools are going to have whatever sports that are important to them and that are important to their people, and they're going to spend efficiently based upon where revenues come in. So, of course, I don't know how the swim team at all these schools travel, but I promise you they're not traveling like the football team. And now we can argue as to whether that should be, but nobody's complaining about it now. Like, I don't see anybody out there beating a drum saying, wait a minute, why is our wrestling team not getting as much attention and as much money as our football team? Nobody
I sense you're saying the same to me that you said the last time we heard. Homer, it'll be different, but calm down. It'll be okay.
It's already okay. Like the NCAA told us for 100 years that if athletes are ever paid, people are going to stop watching, that amateurism was a fundamental principle that was vital to the enterprise. And we went to NIL, and ratings went up, and more people were interested than not. There's always a fringe of folks that say, well, it's ruined it. I'm not watching anymore. They said that when the reserve clause was struck down in baseball and you had free agency, and baseball is more popular than ever. They said it when amateurism was taken out of the Olympic charter in the 1970s, and the Olympics are coming up in July. They're more popular than ever. People don't care whether athletes make money. They just don't care. And I'm sure there have been people saying at some point or another that the NFL, it's unsustainable that a quarterback makes that much money. Yeah. Well, clearly it's sustainable because they're making more than ever, and the NBA is about to sign a new contract. We're going to have, at some point in the near future, $100 million a year basketball players in the NBA. They'll make over $1 million a game, and people are still going to watch. They just don't care, just like they don't care how much Beyonce makes or Taylor Swift makes.
All right.
They like the music.
Can we take a quick break? Because I just have other questions I want to ask, but I will tease with this. So this means NIL is dead?
No, it doesn't.
Oh, all right. Well, can we keep you for a couple more minutes so you can explain that?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Round 2, Jay Bilas. Yeah, it's the best 60 minutes of your day, for sure. I don't know about him, but I know about the rest of us. Next.
More of the Homer Hour coming up next on 94.5 ESPN.
Slowdowns all across the board this evening, starting with 94 westbound from downtown into the stadium interchange. Eastbound also seeing some delays. On 43, both north and southbound seeing slowdowns stretching from downtown to Brown Deer. And 894 looking slow heading west from the Mitchell interchange to the Hale. Traffic is brought to you by James Imaging Systems, your local document imaging partner. Visit jamesimaging.com. Tonight, storms early and humid, a low of 63. On Tuesday, dry and warm most of the day. Evening storms and humid, a high of 80. Weather is brought to you by Showtime Floors, installing beautiful floor shield. Transform your garage or basement floors into a showpiece. Mention ESPN for 10% off. ShowtimeFloors.com. From the WTMJ Traffic Center, I'm Jessica Gatso on 94.5 ESPN.
Wilde and Tout, presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Wisconsin. Also sponsored by Coors Light.
You are looking live.
I am looking live at like 18 different things. I've got my glasses on. I can read it. If you don't want to do it, fine. I'll just lean over.
I got it.
Trade proposal. No, forget you. You had your chance. And you compared me to your grandpa.
May he rest in peace.
Wilde and Tausch, weekdays 9 to noon on 94.5 ESPN. And available wherever you get your podcasts with Wisconsin On Demand.
Looking for a totally rad flavor adventure, brochachos? Look no further than Surfer Boy Pizza as seen in Stranger Things. Each mouth-watering variety contains rich tomato sauce, delicious mozzarella cheese, and a gnarly range of toppings. The crust is crispy on the outside and airy on the inside. You'll think it was hand-tossed by the Surfer Boy Pizza dudes themselves. Look for it in the freezer aisle at your local store and buckle up your taste buds with Surfer Boy Pizza.
Hi, it's John Reitz from Great Midwest Bank, and for most all of us, here's the reality. Life happens, but when those moments occur, 2 words come to mind: common sense. For nearly 90 years, Great Midwest Bank has made the home buying, building, renovation, and refinancing process straightforward, while too many others overthink and overdo. Our portfolio loans are GMB's not-so-best-kept secret. Apply online at greatmidwestbank.com. Great Midwest Bank, your simply local equal housing lender.
Baseball, grilling, festivals, tan lines, and Saz's. Summer in Wisconsin is the finest, and Saz's Statehouse is the place to be. They've been a Milwaukee staple for almost 50 years, so they know a thing or two about summer fun. Enjoy handcrafted cocktails, festival-famous combo platters on Saz's outdoor patio, or cool off with your friends at their famous round bar. Saz's complimentary shuttles are ready to take you to games and concerts at AmFam Field. Get details at Saz's.com, located at 55th and State. See you at Saz's.
Tired of looking at dusty, dirty, and cracked garage floors? Hi, this is ESPN Milwaukee's Jen Latta, and I'm here to tell you how you can get a fresh new look with Floor Shield by Showtime Floors. Using a state-of-the-art coating 4 times stronger than traditional epoxy, it's tough enough to be used in military bases and airports. Floor Shield is certified as an anti-slip floor. It's also eco-friendly, all while being UV stable, and my favorite part, easy to clean. Contact Showtime Floors today and mention ESPN for 10% off. ShowtimeFloors.com.
Golfers, listen up. It's Gabe Neitzel from On the Tee, and we are heading to Scotland with our friends at Wisconsin Golf Trips. That's right, Scotland. You can join myself and Stephen Watson as we head overseas to play some of the best courses in the world. This package includes green fees, lodging, transportation, and more. But there are only a limited amount of spots available, so sign up now. For information on the trip and a link for paying, you can text GOLF right now to the ESPN Milwaukee Talk and Text line at 800-990-3776. That's GOLF to 800-990-3776.
More of the Homer Hour coming up next on 94.5 ESPN.
The second quarter with Jay Bilas. What's going to happen in college sports? Calm down. It'll be okay. But no one's going to know, Jay, how to complain. Are the team's not good because you're not spending enough money? It's 22%. Maybe you're not spending it right. Or are my donations to the school going to be tax deductible? But back to NIL will still continue.
Yes, it can continue. But like I said before, if you enter into a contract with a player, you can buy the player's media rights if you want to.
So it's not going to be like it is now.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be. It just sort of depends on how you want to do it. And but you know, one of the things about NIL, you know, when you make a donation to a collective, there's a school of thought out there that at some point the IRS is going to come in and say, no, that's not a charitable donation. It's not deductible. When you know, if the schools can just pay the players directly, you can go back to the old way of just giving all your donation to the school. You know, you write it off as a charitable donation, then the school decides how they want to pay it out. It's really not that big of a deal. It's not like you didn't have your charitable donation when they were paying the coach, you know, $5 million.
No, but I mean, it's going to be easier. I thought that the NIL, they said it was tax deductible, but I'm not sure that it was. But this is just because you're donating to the school. All right, so what do you want to tell about? Like, how are you going to know, like, the schools are going to have to all hire somebody to decide what you're going to pay players? That's a general manager in other sports. What do you see how this is going to play out?
Well, they already have general managers at a lot of these schools and personnel people, you know, just like you'd have a recruiting coordinator, stuff like that. I mean, everything's changed. So it's really not that big of a deal. I mean, look, if you know who to recruit and who to give a uniform to and who to put in the game when you want to win, you know how much they're worth and how much you're willing to pay. And it's really not that big of a deal. And just like you said, you know, if people say, well, are we not winning just because our coach isn't good or our players aren't good or it's because we're not spending enough money? I mean, those calculations were all made over the last 50 years because they were saying, well, is it because we don't have good enough facilities or is it because our arena isn't good enough or, you know, whatever. There have been all kinds of things that factor into winning. And the coaches like to call it an institutional commitment. But, you know, some schools that don't have gold-plated facilities do really well in their sports, and other ones that have Taj Mahals get their butts kicked.
So are we going to have football, 50 schools in this separate conference, or yes or no? I mean, do you know or do you think?
I don't know, but I don't think it matters. Because, like, tell me who outside the top 50 is even competitive in football now.
I agree with you. I'm not going to argue. I agree with you totally. Like they say, well, this is going to make it better for the big schools. They already exist. There can't be an edge to the big schools any more than it already is right now, I guess. I don't.
Yeah, you know, when schools are allowed to pay, the same players are going to go the same places.
Right.
You might have a couple players here and there, but, you know, the NCAA has always made it sound like once you can pay, then the top 5 quarterbacks in every class are going to go to Alabama, and they're going to be 20 deep at quarterback. Well, that's absurd. Like, no quarterback would sit, you know, the second best quarterback in the country is not going to sit behind the best quarterback. And you know, different schools are going to be able to pay more as their best recruit for Alabama.
What's going to happen to the transfer thing?
Well, that's where the contracts will help. If you sign somebody to a contract with a buyout, you're going to see movement really decrease.
Okay.
So it's not going to be as big of a deal. You'll still have transfers. But once you start paying them, you can start putting contract conditions in that will limit the amount of transfers. And then they're also going to have, you know, the scholarship restrictions will be gone going forward. So you can give a scholarship to anybody you want, but you'll have strict roster limits. So a basketball team, like, I don't know what the limit will be, but a basketball team might be a 12-man roster. Football might be an 85-man roster. And they can't go above that. So does it mean you might not be able to have walk-ons? That's possible. But what will happen is somebody who would have been a walk-on at Alabama will now accept a scholarship at Central Michigan.
Yep.
So you know, you'll have that kind of movement. But to me, it's just part of the business. We're going to have some things that'll be a little bit different. But my question is always, even when people say, well, they're going to have to cancel sports, like there it goes, cancel sports. First of all, I don't accept that as true. But if we do see that in certain instances, what people are really saying is athletes should remain unpaid so these other people can play.
Yeah. No, I said I'm a college basketball player. I didn't know Mother Teresa was part of the deal. That's not my
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. It's not right because none of the coaches are taking a discount so they can have a rest.
All right, 22% of future ed. That means that the SEC schools or the schools that are they're going to have way more money than everybody else of 22%. Am I right?
That's right, and that's why, Homer, when you hear people complain, especially NCAA people like administrators, ADs, and the like, when they complain about competitive balance when it pertains to athlete compensation, this is where they're talking out of both sides of their mouths. If they wanted competitive balance, they would revenue share, and they're never going to do that because, like you say, the SEC and the Big Ten, they want to keep their money and they want to keep their influence. They don't want to share it with the masses. What they want to have happen is the athletes play for free, or they play for expenses only. They play for a scholarship only. And then all the administrators get to pay themselves. That's what they liked. They loved that system.
All right, so basketball schools have basketball only. Well, they're at a disadvantage. Not really, because the schools that have football and basketball, they got to be concerned about football first, I would assume. And so I don't know, is it going to be better for the basketball schools that don't have football, or am I making something up again?
I don't know the answer to that. Like, I don't know the exact revenues of the Big East, which is a basketball-centric conference. But so when you don't have football, obviously you don't get the football revenue, but at the same time you don't have the football expenses either. So, maybe. Look, I've been surprised how incredibly competitive the Big East has been since its reformation after the original Big East kind of broke
Thanks
up.
to UConn.
No, it's not just UConn. I mean, all the programs.
Yes.
Yeah, they've in Marquette. I mean, they've all been very good. And I sort of thought that it might be a tough road to hoe for them, and it hasn't been. And now they may. Who knows? It may be in the future when revenues keep exploding. If the Big East, or like you're saying, the basketball-centric schools.
Well, if some schools will drop football because they can't compete, I mean, they're not going to leave the big conference. Will the conference kick them out? You always wonder about the weakest.
I don't know. Look, if I were king, I would think there need to be a lot of changes in the way the NCAA does. But when I say NCAA, I mean all the members, not just the office in Indianapolis. But, to me, it's ludicrous that all these conferences run all their teams all over the place when it doesn't make sense.
Right, you can do that you can just have divisions and they don't travel very far, and you can solve that pretty quickly. Sure.
Yeah, you can have regional schedules, and the reason you can tell that is a number of teams and a number of schools in the Big Ten or whatever, these different conferences, they have hockey programs, and not everybody has a hockey program, so they have kind of a separate thing for hockey. You could do it and have it sports specific, but the problem is, there are media rights contracts in place for all these conferences, and some of these other sports that we're talking about, the quote unquote Olympic sports, they have inventory that the networks own, and that inventory is valuable. Even though people don't think softball is as big a deal as football, and it's not. It's still valuable.
I always said I wanted you to be president of the NCAA, but I'm not sure I can say that anymore because I think they want somebody who's a political expert who can get laws passed that are necessary to help the NCAA. Am I correct on that second part?
Well, that's what they have. They hired
correct.
Charlie Baker, and he's the former governor of Massachusetts. But that's a great point, Homer. What's happening? So this has been purposeful, this settlement of the House case by the NCAA. It's pretty clear to me anyway, at least I think it's clear, what the NCAA is trying to do. They're trying to settle this case, and if the court out in California, the Ninth Circuit, approves the settlement, the NCAA is going to take that settlement to Congress and say, here, let's drop this in your lap, make this law for us so that we're protected from antitrust lawsuits going forward. I don't know if Congress would ever do that, but to me, what's happening is the NCAA is agreeing to an illegal wage cap that just is 22% higher than their old illegal wage cap. And they're trying to bind athletes going forward over the next 10 years to that. So at 22%, revenues are going to continue to go up, and absent some calamity.
And somebody's going to file a suit saying 22% isn't fair.
Not if Congress makes it into a law.
Correct.
If Congress makes it into a law,
right.
then the antitrust complaints go away.
And that's what they want.
Yeah, well, that's what they want, because they basically want to have they want a salary cap without having to bargain for it. And what my thing is, like, that's what I would ask the court before there's any approval of this settlement. What I would ask is, where is the cap on any other aspect of this industry? There's no cap on coaches' salaries. There's no cap on facility spending. There's no cap on anything. The only cap is on athletes. And to me, that seems unfair and wrong, especially when it's proven that the athletes are the revenue drivers. Like, one of the reasons that NIL exploded is because everybody knows who the most valuable assets are. It's the players.
Right.
You can win. I mean, you're not going to win just with Nick Saban as your coach. Nick Saban's got to have players, and if he doesn't have players, he's not going to win.
So we will talk again, but I'll be watching things, watching what happens with as you said, with the what's the name of it? I call it the $2.8 billion.
Yeah, it's basically called the easiest way is the House case. It's a 3 or 4 cases.
And what happens in terms of trying to create the law and all that kind of stuff? So calm down. Everything will be okay. Is that the way to when people ask me, what did Jay Bilas say? He said they got enough money. Everything will be okay. Is that fair?
I think it is. Okay. I mean, it just strains the mind that the industry generates $18 billion a year, and they want to say they don't have enough money for their
By
swimming
the industry,
program.
you mean college sports?
College sports, $18 billion a year. I think they can get by.
All right, Jay, thanks again, and golf ball's coming, and look forward to our next discussion when you can help us again. Thanks.
Always a pleasure, Homer. Thanks for having me.
Jay Bilas, and go to WisconsinOnDemand.com. You must listen to this again. Next, Jason Wilde.
The Homer Hour is back after this on 94.5 ESPN.
Slowdowns across the board this evening. 94 westbound from downtown stretching past the stadium interchange. Also slowdowns on 94 eastbound. 894 westbound from the Mitchell interchange to the Hale. That's looking at least a 6-minute delay. And on 43 southbound, slowdowns are starting past Silver Spring Drive, extending all the way into downtown. Traffic is brought to you by Great Lakes Dragaway, a 1/4-mile long drag strip plus a drift pad. Even drive your own car on the track. Find full event schedule and ticket information at GreatLakesDragaway.com. Tonight, storms early and humid, a low of 63. On Tuesday, dry for most of the day, then evening storms and humid, a high of 80. From the WTMJ Traffic Center, I'm Jessica Gatso on 94.5 ESPN.
The only thing that tops our selection is your savings discount liquor. If it's a celebrate or tailgate, when you're gonna recreate upstate. If it's a holiday, birthday, any date, you can save at discount liquor.
Baseball and tailgating. Two of Wisconsin's traditions are back. Have you made a game plan? Hi, this is Marie from Discount Liquor. For over 60 years, we've been part of the starting lineup that makes your tailgate an experience. With over 2,000 varieties of beer, 4,000 types of liquor, and over 8,000 wines, we're your pre-game headquarters. It's not a game without a tailgate, and it's not a tailgate without a stop at Discount Liquor, where we literally have everything you need to get back to your baseball traditions. So before you head to the ballpark, head to Discount Liquor. 2 area locations, in Milwaukee on 51st in Oklahoma, and in downtown Waukesha on Main and Barstow.
Discount Liquor.
Eagle Sports Range has an unbeatable offer on concealed carry license classes. For just $49, enroll in their 3-hour class led by expert instructors prioritizing safety. Learn laws, techniques, and mindset for responsible carrying. Stick around for an optional hour of range time with instructors included in the package. Practice under professional guidance and gain confidence. Open 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day at 2525 East Layton Avenue in Cudahy. Secure your spot at eaglesportsrange.com. Eagle Sports Range, where safety meets skill.
Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? Haven't seen you around the gym for a while.
Yeah, I've really fallen off. Since I turned 40, I just don't get the results I used to get.
Could be lower testosterone.
Lower T?
Yeah, I went through it a while back. Once you hit 40, your body has less free testosterone. I got Nugenix Total T, and it's made a huge difference for me.
I've seen that ad on TV. Is it for real?
Oh, yeah. The key ingredient is something called Tesnor, which helps boost free and total testosterone levels to help you trim up and stay lean.
And it's made a difference for you?
Man, I feel like I'm in my 20s again, at work, in the gym, and in the bedroom.
Are they still giving out complimentary bottles for people to try it for themselves?
Yeah, you just need to send them a text.
Text HUNK to 42424 right now for your complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T, the #1 selling testosterone booster at GNC. Plus, text now and we'll include a bottle of Nugenix Thermo, our most powerful fat incinerator ever, to help you get back into shape fast, absolutely free. Text HUNK to 42424. That's HUNK to 42424.
They say seeing is believing, and when you see what's inside at American Place Casino, you better believe you're gonna love it. Because when it comes to amazing gaming, we're a real game changer. With the most exciting of table games like blackjack, craps, and roulette, the newest slots, a sportsbook, restaurants, bars, and more. So if you're ready for excitement, we'll see you soon. American Place Casino. Change the game.
Must be 21 years of age or older. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, crisis counseling and referral services can be accessed by calling 1-800-GAMBLER, 1-800-426-2537.
You're listening to the Homer Hour on 94.5 ESPN. It's time for Jason Wilde on the Homer Hour on 94.5 ESPN.
Everybody on the planet Earth should get information about the Green Bay Packers from Jason Wilde every day of the year. We do our part, but not good enough, so you're going to have to go to WisconsinOnDemand.com and listen, watch to Wilde and Tauscher and everything else Jason does. It's listed all the different appearances he makes. Good evening, Jason.
Well, hello, Stephen. How are you?
I am awesome. Looking forward to your connection of the Packers to Justin Jefferson's new deal, meaning that the NFL is moving very close or closer than ever before to significant amounts of guaranteed money.
Yeah, 110 of the 140. Yeah, as well. You know, look, I'm always going to be pro player. I've always thought, I always think back to my youth and Teddy Higuera, right? Great pitcher, signs a big contract, and just has one injury challenge after another. But I'm guessing, given how far Teddy came, that was life-changing money for him and his family. And the sport where there is the most danger of injury has long resisted guaranteed contracts. And the rank and file players are probably never going to get them. But more and more of the draft picks are getting them now, or at least having the vast majority of their money guaranteed. And I think that's a good thing. What I don't understand is why the NFL Players Association writ large doesn't do more to try and win those kind of battles. Like this idea of this off-season program, like if you really and truly are going to get stuck with an 18th game, don't play small ball with, well, we'd like to have a longer off season and start the training camp and the ramp up in late June and no, say we want guaranteed contracts up and down the roster. You want an 18th game? That's the deal, bro. And I don't think they will, and certainly they don't have enough players who can hold out for something like that, so it'll never happen. But that's the kind of stuff they should be fighting for. They should be fighting for more money in retirement for players and their health care after they're done with their careers. Having more time off, it's just such a short-sighted thing. And the fact that they didn't do more in the last CBA to help retired players, I just thought, hey, geniuses. Eventually, you're going to be those guys. Like, this isn't just helping the old guys that are already retired. This will help you someday when you are those guys. And yet they still didn't do it. So I'm glad that at least the superstar players are getting closer to the fully guaranteed contracts that Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL players get. But I was thinking of it from a different perspective, and that is I'm saddled with Tausch and Kyle Wallace of KBN, who both, for at least a period of time, I think Tausch came back today and went back to the value of having a guy who's a stud at that position. But both those guys were at least considering or fully believing the idea that you're better off not having a number one wide receiver as good as Justin Jefferson, and you'd rather just have a bunch of good to very good guys. And that was kind of the way I was thinking about it amid the news of Justin Jefferson's contract.
And we're going to have a chance to observe. This is not, what do you think? It's like, let's watch what teams do.
Yeah, but the Vikings have another really good wide receiver. Like, Jordan Addison is really good.
But you know the answer. When you're paying the quarterback as little as they are, they can afford to do this.
They can, yeah.
And
right.
So I think if you clearly, to me, the wide receiver has become so important. I mean, the running backs mean diddly now, and they show it by what they're getting. So the wide receivers are so important that if you can afford it with that cheap young quarterback, then I think it would appear any team's going to try to pay big money for as many wide receivers as possible, or tight ends, right? I mean, why not? It helps the young quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, in one sense, yes, but the conversation and the idea that I've been kind of talking about all day, first with Tausch this morning, and then when I joined KVM this afternoon, is the idea that it's just so much more beneficial to have four guys that are on the good plane as opposed to one great Hall of Fame caliber player. And I heard the example of the Devontae. I don't think it is personally. And this idea that the Packers didn't or weren't trying to have or that weren't capable of having other really good wide receivers during the Adams era, that wasn't it. It was that Goody whiffed on some of his draft picks, Amari, and the fact that that left them with, the next pass catchers after Adams in 20 and 21 were like Robert Tonyan, Alan Lazard, MVS. Like, they did not have a legit number two. And I think Alan Lazard showed that during that 2022 season when they traded Adams away. Lazard led them in receptions with 60, and that was only because he was playing with Rodgers, because you saw what happened last year. And this isn't a knock on – it's not Alan Lazard's fault that the Jets paid him and that the Packers treated him like a number two receiver. It's not his fault. It's the Packers and the Jets' fault, because what he is a good 3 or 4 who can block the hell out of defensive ends and linebackers, and that's who he is. And if he gets 40 catches in a season and does a really good job blocking, then that's a perfect role for him. But the fact that he was their number one receiver after they traded away Adams, if anybody's still arguing that you don't want to have a great wide receiver, I think that would be Exhibit A, because I know what they have now. I get it. They got 4 guys that we all like. Me, fans, certainly LaFleur and Jordan Love. They've got Christian Watson. Of course, there's the health questions. They've got Romeo Doubs, who is consistent. I don't think he's flashy, but he's really good in the red zone. He's really good on third down. They've got Jaden Reed, who could be the best of the bunch. And they've got Dontavion Wicks, who I think is going to be the guy that has the breakout season, and the similarities and the comps to Devontae Adams will start following after that. And so it's great that they have all 4 of those guys. It's great that they drafted 2 of them in 2022 and 2 of them in 2023. But that doesn't mean that Goody now has figured out the wide receiver position to such a degree that they can just turn that stuff over at that position and not pay anybody buco bucks even if a guy earns it, because they'll just say, well, we can replace him with someone else. That means he's got to be near perfect. And we know, you and I have talked, because we remember before this cavalcade of back-to-back strong wide receiver classes in 22 and 23, when Goody couldn't pick a good wide receiver to save his life.
Yeah, no one's perfect. It has nothing to do with it. It's not. It's too hard.
Right.
Just call up and ask Ron Wall. No one can be perfect.
Right, so. And he's not going to be either, and he's going to miss on a guy or two as well. And that's why if one of these, because the other thing people forget, because I understand fans are excited about the format that their wide receiver room has currently. But if you look, there has been it's not the same as the quarterback lineage, because there's only two and now a third that you're hoping lives up to that billing. But go back to Sterling Sharp, right? Sterling Sharp breaks his neck in 94. I think 94 was his last season. And Robert Brooks, who'd spent a year or two behind him, maybe even 3 years behind him, emerges in 95 and has 102 catches, nearly 1,500 yards, 13 touchdowns. Then he begat Antonio Freeman. Then Freeman, I love using my Old Testament language. Then Antonio Freeman begat Donald Driver. And then Driver begat Greg Jennings. And then Jennings begat Jordy Nelson. And then Jordy Nelson begat Davante Adams. And then here endeth the bloodline until one of these young guys emerges. But in 2022, there was no one. In 2023, there really was no one. We think maybe Jaden Reed could be the next guy, and Rob Domofsky and I spent a lot of time with Jaden Reed last week talking to him about this. But again, he had a good year, but no one is fitting him for a gold jacket just yet. And so when you look at that lineage, and I'll look at where they're at now, ideally, one of those guys becomes an elite, top-level, first-team, all-pro level type wide receiver. And then you'll have to deal with paying him or choosing not to pay him. But the bottom line is this idea that I want kind of everybody to stay at like a B+. I don't want anybody who's an A+ wrecking the curve that we have to pay them. I just personally don't agree with that.
Well, it even became an issue this year for a while with the Kansas City Chiefs. Well, even you have a great quarterback. They're like, we can't go downfield. We need, but all the receivers the Packers have, what they know is if they get really good, they're going to make a ton of money because wide receivers are really, really important.
Here or somewhere else, exactly.
Yeah, and that's just like if the Packers didn't have to pay Jordan Love, I'd be saying I want Davante Adams back, even with all these young guys. I don't worry if the quarterback's good that he's going to, Aaron Rodgers threw the ball to Davante Adams because everybody else sucked without him saying that. Or the gap was so huge. If Davante Adams came back on this team, there's no way he would dominate in terms of percentage of passes to him like he did in the past.
No, he'd be their leading receiver, but he'd be like 85, 90 catches as opposed to 115 or 123. I mean, again, look at who, and Rodgers, say whatever you want about him, but Rodgers was like Patrick Mahomes has been in Kansas City of late, tasked with the idea of, hey, he can make anybody good enough. And I think we found in 2022 and Rodgers was at fault for some of this. I don't absolve him. Had he come to the offseason program, had he made more of an effort to get on the same page with Dobbs and with Watson, it wouldn't have been quite as bad. But they trade away Adams, and the idea that you're going to trot out there Alan Lazard like he's Julio Jones that was just preposterous. It was just malpractice.
Well, Jason, glad you could do it, and we will talk again on Wednesday. Thanks.
All right, Homer. Take care. Be good.
Fourth quarter next.
More of the Homer Hour coming up next on 94.5 ESPN. Wilde and Tausch, presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Wisconsin. Also sponsored by American Family Insurance.
Trade proposal, Christian Watson. Packers receive Justin Jefferson. I think I found a way for us to get Ayuk, Jefferson, and T. Higgins and not have to give up all that much.
Weekdays 9 to noon on 94.5 ESPN and available wherever you get your podcasts with Wisconsin On Demand.
The Vollrath Company implemented a DocuWare content management solution from James Imaging Systems. Vollrath Director of Information Systems, John Sharp.
They've helped us upgrade from a previous version of our document management to automate our accounts payable processes, to store the invoices, to the three-way match, and really streamline those processes.
In addition to a DocuWare content management solution, the key to continued success is the James Imaging Systems Solutions Group.
And as an extension of our team, they've got intimate knowledge of why we've done some of the things that we do. And when we run into any issues, they're there to support us.
A DocuWare content management solution from the James Imaging Systems Solutions Group.
They know exactly where we are in our project cycle so that we've always got continuous improvement.
Content management and workflow automation from James Imaging Systems, your local business technology partner. Call 262-781-7700 or visit jamesimaging.com.
An ESPN Radio Extra Point with Jonathan Zaslow.
Kyrie Irving already has one. If he were to win his second, I mean, just consider the narrative. And almost all of it, I think has been pretty fair around Kyrie the last few years, considering the narrative the last few years, and then how he is trying to change that narrative now where he's been best behavior. He's been very pleasant in front of a camera, in front of a microphone. He's playing fantastic. Just seems like a happy dude this last year in Dallas. He can really, put a cherry on top of the Sunday of that narrative, doing a complete 180 if he could win his second NBA title. And then if we start talking, Dre, about, just legacy and historically how we view that kind of player, I'm trying to think. There aren't very many players who are like a 1B to 1A or even just a solid number 2 who have won championships on different teams.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same but is 95% cheaper? And you can get it online at hims.com/joy. Through Hims, you'll get a free medical consultation to determine the ED medication that's best for you. Discreet shipping if prescribed, a 100% online process, and a range of treatment options, including trusted generic alternatives to the name brands at up to 95% off. ED is personal, and at Hims, so is treating it. Just go to hims.com/joy and get connected to a licensed medical provider online for free with zero copay, no expensive appointments, and no awkward face-to-face conversations. To start your free online visit, you need to go to this exclusive address, hims.com/joy. That's hims.com/joy for your free online visit. hims.com/joy.
Summer with Saz's. Wonton-wrapped mozzarella sticks, refreshing craft cocktails, crispy sour cream and chive fries, barbecue pulled pork sandwiches, you name it, they've got it. Saz's Steakhouse has been a Milwaukee staple for almost 50 years. So grab your friends and come experience the finest for yourself. Join them on their outdoor patio or pull up a seat at Saz's famous Round Bar. Complimentary shuttles are ready to take you to games and concerts at AmFam Field, located at 55th and State. Learn more at saz's.com.
Welcome back to the Homer Hour on 94.5 ESPN.
Yep, the best 60 minutes of your day, without a doubt. You go to WisconsinOnDemand.com. Jay Bilas and Jason Wilde, both with fantastic stuff that you need to hear a second time. Higher Love Cannabis Company. I know, Homer's going to tell me where and how far a drive it is. Yep, that's my spot. Higher Love Cannabis Company, 7 stores located across the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, including just over the border in Menominee, like 5 seconds over the border. And again, less than an hour from Green Bay, 2 hours and 15 minutes from Milwaukee. Higher Love Cannabis Company, less than an hour from Green Bay, 2 hours and 15 minutes from Milwaukee. There are other things. The Menominee has their brick and mortar store, and it's the only UP cultivator offering organic, clean green, certified products. You can count on them to provide only the good stuff and none of the bad stuff. Nice. But, yes, most important, Higher Love Cannabis Company, less than an hour from Green Bay, 2 hours and 15 minutes from Milwaukee. Discount Liquor Twitter poll question, do you think major college sports will remain as good as they are today when schools eventually start paying players? 63% say no. Even if you listen to Jay Bilas, maybe some of the people on Twitter didn't. My answer is yes. How? Unless I missed something, Pebble, what's going to change? Not much, is it?
Not much, no. Just the players will be under contracts.
And
instead of basically scholarships or whatever.
Right. And then so much of the revenue, some schools are going to have more, then how's that all going to work out? But as Jay Bilas said a couple of years ago, and I questioned how much money, $18 billion in college sports. Could it mean that some of the other sports that don't create revenue could become club sports? It's already started in some sports, depending on which sport you played or follow. Maybe, maybe not. You know, how are they going to decide how to spend the money? Excellent point about the House case and $2.8 billion and the 22% for future revenue. I'm sure they'd love a law where the schools don't have to deal with this anymore, and it's 22%. But I don't know how you can determine that 22% is what should stay till the end of time. So. Just watch that, but I guess it has been agreed to. The site that I like to go to is nil-wire.com. I think that. Do you ever check that one out, Pebble?
I have not. No,
they do it. They do a ton of stories on it, which talks about NIL and but 22% of future revenues going to players. But yeah, to be simple, they'll have a contract, and the contract can include all the different things. And even as far as from what Jay Bill said, it seems like you're going to be able to transfer right away. But if you have in your contract that you can't transfer right away, then you sign that contract. You can't leave anywhere. And all those things can be in there. But I would say major college sports will remain as good as they are today when schools eventually start paying players. I'm a yes on there. Pebble, where are you?
I'm a yes, too. And not much change has changed since NIL's been aboard. So
yes, and everybody understands that's a total mess. Now, they may be moving in the direction of the schools because people have told me they've started doing contracts with NIL. And so that's what you're going to have when you're 22%. But follow it closely. But yeah, take a deep breath. College sports will remain as good as they are today when they start playing players. Will it be a little different? Might be. But will it be okay? Tell them, Pebble. They won't listen to me. Tell them.
100% okay, yes.
100%. Next.
The evening commute is still looking pretty slow with delays on 94 westbound stretching from downtown past the